Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? There are people listening right now, I know, who so desperately want to step into what's next for themselves and in their lives, but they feel trapped literally by their community. How do
Mhm.
you navigate that?
You have to just put it aside. You have to start thinking with I feel so blessed to have chosen to fall in love with and marry somebody who's 25 years older than me because what it does for me is put into perspective how short life is. And I tell Brandon this all the time. It's not his favorite topic, but like I only have a finite amount of time with him. And knowing that I only have a finite amount of time with him, I want to make the most out of that time. But then it makes me remember, like, wait a second, I also have a finite amount of time here. And so this idea of death and having death around me, not that Brandon's dying anytime soon. This is the part that Brandon doesn't love so much, but like this idea and this kind of constant, like, just thing that's in my life with him and our age difference really does put into that perspective that I don't want to be 85 years old and be stuck around the same people that I was stuck around and to be talking about the same things and to have not really gone after it. And I do believe for anybody who's listening to this right now, a lot of people have those feelings, but you have that moment. You watch a movie that's inspiring, or you go listen to a podcast, and then you get back into your normal environment and you don't take the action to make the change. And so I like to think of it in the reverse of like, how do I make this experience so painful for myself? How do I really live in, oh my God, Natalie, what if you were in Brandon's shadow the rest of your life because you never figured out how to publicly speak because you were so embarrassed and insecure. Like what imagine being 85-year-old you and feeling this way. And all of a sudden, as soon as I think of 85-year-old Natalie, I'm like, she is not going to feel this way. I'm going to conquer whatever I need to conquer now in order to not have to show up as that person in this lifetime. And death for me is a significant motivator, more so than the opportunity. You're like, what a glamorous, awesome life could look like right now. Cause that oftentimes doesn't actually force the behavior change.
That's such a great point, and I've often said, if you can change your relationship with death and time, you will
Mm,
change the way that you operate in the world, because
yep,
assuredly it's fucking coming whether you like it or not.
yep.
And one of my people ask me all the time, what is my fear? I literally only have one fear in my life, and that is that I will die with regret. And anything
Mhm,
shy of that, like, I'm fucking jumping off the diving board. Now, I will
mhm.
say this, it took like rock bottom to be able to get to that place to even be able to say that. What was your journey being able to step into this mindset? Because I'm going to guess, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that this is not where you started.
No, it's totally not where I started. I was so insecure for so long, and my story, sometimes you look at people and you think, "Man, they were born like that." I look at my husband, or I look at people like Grant Cardone, and it's like, they must have come out of the womb and just been able to be charismatic and energetic, and I had none of those skill sets, and so I really felt very introverted being around people like that, and I told myself that story for the longest time until it really clicked for me. I was sitting at a 10X growth conference back in 2019, and a guy by the name of Pete Vargas went on stage and was talking about how you need to be able to share your message and your story in order to make an impact. And that message at that point in time really pivoted my mindset around how selfish I was being by allowing myself to become so introverted that I wasn't able to help other people. And at the time, I was more focused on helping other women, specifically in age gap relationships, because it's a difficult thing to navigate. And not a lot of people talk about the challenges because it does seem like it's something that comes from privilege. But really, what happens is you get lost in yourself. So I had worked with Brandon for many years before, and I had this business skill set. But this thing that was really plaguing me was the insecurity around the relationship. And this idea of 85-year-old Natalie dying on her deathbed, still being introverted and having lived in Brandon's shadow for the rest of my life was the real catalyst for me to say, okay, I'm going to own my story. I'm going to learn how to communicate with other people. I'm going to do the things that I need to do to get confident in myself. I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to read books. I'm going to become that person. And that catalyst moment happened to be at the exact same time that we met our future business partners who allowed us to, join forces with them and start connecting with their audience, which also gave me the encouragement being around the same type of like-minded people who are the 10Xers, and their growth and their stories kind of fueled me and propelled me to just continue with it and not give up.
I think there's so much space in which we make that declaration to ourselves, right? I'm going to do that thing. I'm going to show up.
Mm,
I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to execute. Was it literally a 180 for you? Because for me, it was a struggle. Like I go look at from 26 to 29, these 3 years of my life were
uh-huh,
so fucking difficult because it was like
uh-huh.
one step forward, 8 million steps backwards. And
Yeah.
I think people often get caught up in this idea of like, oh yeah, they just made a decision and everything was different.
Hmm. I love that you talk about this and ask this. This is such a great question because I've never been asked this question before. But no, it wasn't one decision where all of a sudden there was this 180. Uh, in 2019, I made the decision that I was going to start public speaking, that I was going to get a speaking coach, that I was going to go through courses around my story. So the journey really started in 2019, in January of that year. Working out 3 times a week was the original target, and then the real catalyst for me was actually COVID. And I'll never forget when the whole world shut down, and I heard Grant Cardone on a webinar telling people that now is the time to get your discipline in. It is not the time to sit on the couch. It is not the time to drink excessively. It's not the time to just panic and freeze. Now is the time to reinforce and really implement those things so that you have confidence during a time when everybody else has likely lost their confidence. And so going into COVID and quarantine, everything changed for me then. I moved from going to bed at like midnight most nights, waking up a little bit later, to I was in bed every single night by 9:30. I worked out every single day. I did Cardone University trainings every single day. I entirely changed my diet. And that 1.5 month span that we were in quarantine in the Pacific Northwest entirely changed the trajectory of the past 2 years because it gave me the discipline that I needed. And it was that was like to me the biggest pivot. But now those things are routines and habits that I can't imagine living life without because I know how strong it made me. But no, it was initially this constant battle for about a year and a half of one step forward, maybe not 8 million steps backwards, but maybe like 3 or 4 steps backwards, and then feeling a lack of confidence in myself.